But the other thing I wanted to talk about, another achievement, is what is coming up in Underfoot. I could be wrong on this point, but this achievement in Underfoot, if memory serves, was told that only one guild has ever done this. Again, this is, hearsay. I don't actually have first-hand knowledge. Frankly, I never even raided on Underfoot. I only played it after Underfoot had already been cleared. I had skipped that entire expansion in original Everquest. If memory serves, I came back to the game somewhere in the middle of Vale of Alaris, and I played very briefly during House of Thule. Um, Barely even worth mentioning. So I have no first-hand experience of this achievement. All I know is that it's really hard, and the gauntlet that I have thrown and that one other person has supported is that frankly, I want the Faceless to do it on the night that Underfoot unlocks. Now, that sounds crazy from what I've heard about the event. I'm not going to go into the specifics of the mechanics because, again, I've not done it. I would probably misexplain it. But there's a couple things that make me think that doing something like this could be really good for us. And I think it's just a guess here, but it seems achievable. Number one, obviously, the Faceless has done a lot of cool things in EverQuest, but we've done all of them on TLPs because up until Cello sitting live, um, Faceless has only ever hit live one time. But to my knowledge, there's most of the things that Faceless has done that is really awesome. I've always been based around beating expansions faster than other guilds had. And some servers, or some server rule sets, I should say, have advantages to that point than others. Mischief has a lot of wild rule sets, obviously, that allow it to do things differently than other servers have. And frankly, at least in my experience, because of them, a lot of raids in Mischief have been really easy. Now, I may have this YouTube channel, I may have been in Faceless for a few years. I may have played on 2 or 3 different servers, which isn't even a lot really compared to what other people have. So I'm not trying to sound like I'm some authority on this topic, but everyone knows it. Everyone knows that clearing raids on Mischief is easier, especially now that the empowered banner exists. Once a server or an expansion has been unlocked for a month, it makes the rest of that expansion incredibly boring, and I think it's just a snooze fest. But Grand Slam on the very first night of raids makes things a lot different. Number one, we won't have the empowered banner. We're not going to have an entire raid that has that event memorized backwards and forwards, unless, of course, you do a ton of practice on test, which we always do practice on tests, but it's always pretty lackluster in my opinion. I always feel still nervous on unlock nights, even though I should know the content. I think doing Grand Slam on the night that unlocks makes it more difficult for a few reasons. Number one, we won't have the massive level of gear that on unlock night that Mischief is used to. Obviously, after we've raided an expansion 2 or 3 times, we've gotten as many as 4 to 6 times worth of loot for that expansion compared to a regular server because we, on average, get more loot due to the Mischief's loot rules. Also, it's worth mentioning that because Mischief loot is tradable, and because we're so focused on clearing the raid as soon as possible, we historically have not passed out loot from the new expansion until a couple days later, because it gives people time to actually get some sleep and recuperate, and for everyone to bed at the same time. Underfoot gear, a lot of it is significantly better than the stuff in Scepters of Destruction, especially as it relates to tanks and obviously melee weapons. So assuming we do that style of loot where we don't pass it around to the raiding members, um, to at least use for that night, it's going to, in theory, put the guild on, I don't want to say equal footing for gear, but on at least measurably consistent footing, meaning that I think most people that are in raid 1 for the faceless should be pretty close to max equipment, if not really close, if not already there, even at this point. So throwing down a challenge such as doing Grand Slam on the very first night of the expansion, I think is something that is potentially reachable, provided that leadership and obviously the fellow raid itself also agrees. The main reason why I want to do it is because, frankly, most people would think it's not possible. And I think at the very minimum, it's going to be extremely difficult. And I'm just a, you know, regular raider. I'm not a member of office, the leadership team, or anything like that. I have no decision in this process, and if I'm lucky, maybe they won't even hear about this. Although I will make sure they do because I want it to happen. But I think if we are able to do Grand Slam on the very first night that Underfoot unlocks on this server, that will just be a big gauntlet we are just slamming down on the table that says, we are here, we have done something that no one else has, and probably no one else ever will again. You don't get very many chances to do that in a game that's 25 years old, except for things that I think don't really matter. I mean, I've personally been a member of a lot of raids that killed an expansion faster than anyone had previously killed it before. I've forgotten about almost every single one of them, because that is also true of so many other guilds. How many other guilds on other servers can also say they've beaten an expansion faster than someone else? It's a fun measuring stick, but we all have it. But I really think, again, to summarize it as clearly as I possibly can, if we do Grand Slam on the very night the Underfoot unlocks, I will personally buy every member of the guild who is within 15 miles of a Denny's a Grand Slam breakfast. That is my mission. That is the challenge that I have thrown out there, and I really hope that we're able to at least attempt the challenge.
He meant of the entire raid, not the entire guild. Obviously.
That's all I have for you guys. Have a great night.